emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus. You have accessed entry 983.PR3117, certificate number 39398, the Presidential Fitness Test.
You ever spend any time in the gunks? Do you know the gunks well?
I don't know the gunks at all.
What would you say the gunks are? I was kind of wondering. This was new to me as well.
The gunks. It sounds like an intestinal problem.
Yeah, they're like the bad guys from an 80s commercial where it's like...
The cold pricklies.
Yeah, or the cavity creeps.
Cavity creeps. Or who are the ones that...
the soggies, the ones that hate Captain Crunch?
Yeah.
Is that what you were going to say?
I was going to say that. But then the sudsing bubbles, didn't they at some point have an enemy?
The Dow scrubbing bubbles hate Mr. Grout, Mr. Gray Grout.
Yeah, Mr. Tub Gross.
Does that exist anymore? By the way, TV commercials where there's like a personified cartoon enemy that the product fights?
There is one, and it's there's like some really gross one where it's a gross green thing. And what is it? It's like tooth decay maybe, or belching, or
it's a pro belching commercial?
No, I don't
The
think
American
so.
Belching Council reminds you to clear your gut daily.
I saw one where not long ago where I felt like, oh, that's like the scrubbing bubbles, except really gross.
They've really done some kind of research. There's people with electrodes tied to their brain, and their eyes are Ludovico'd open, and they watch the gross guy come out, and the polygraph thing is spiking. And then the nice lady plugs in a Glade air freshener, and there's just this wave of dopamine that hits them.
Thank God.
Oh, she plugged in the Glade air freshener.
They got rid of the green meanies.
I was brushing my teeth last night, and I was using Crest, and I realized that I have a very strong Crest loyalty back to my childhood.
I do too.
And I think it's because of those. They were the only ones that had the fun kind of G.I. Joe commercials where the Crest Corps or the Crest Commandos or whatever it was. Are you a little too old to remember
I'm
these?
a little too old for that. I think I might remember it, but that didn't influence me.
Like Saturday morning cartoons, a team of personified Crest toothpaste warriors would fire Crest-related weaponry at the cavity creeps and drive them back.
I think that might have been an early 80s invention.
The whole thing is set in if I remember it right, it's some kind of aquatic, maybe subterranean environment that's supposed to make you think that it's all happening in a big human mouth.
Right. A big, gross, subterranean
There's commandos.
mouth.
There's commandos running around your gums.
No, I always felt about Crest that it was that everything else, all the other toothpastes were kind of like all the other
quasi-Soviet equivalent.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was a Solomon ski binding guy, and you couldn't have gotten me into Tyrolia ski bindings for all the money in the world.
But toothpaste is exactly the same ingredients, active and otherwise, which means that Madison Avenue somehow did an amazing job at convincing us that AIM and Colgate were the Pepsi of Crest.
Or like store grade.
Yeah, exactly.
Toothpaste.
And the AIM and Colgate guys are like, hey, what?
No, we're just...
We'll make a cartoon if you want.
It's the same baking soda and xanthan gum.
Yeah, it's the same stuff. It's a certain dentist approved percentage of trace amount of sodium fluoride, and that's it.
I have noticed lately that I have very little gum loyalty. I chew gum, and
What a glimpse behind the curtain we're getting.
I know. And gum seems like a thing you would be intensely loyal about.
Sure. They all taste different. It's going to be in your mouth for an hour.
And here in the house, there's a lot of Orbit loyalty.
Oh, wow.
But I'm fine to just whatever's there. I'll chew whatever gum you got.
I mean, gum loyalty tends to peak in childhood when you're on the level of the gum in the checkout line,
right?
And you're like, Mom, can we get bubble yum?
Oh, come on! It tastes like grape or watermelon.
But if you told me that Orbit or bubble yum or whatever didn't exist anymore, I would be like, oh, okay, because I haven't looked at a pack. Now that I'm tall enough, I haven't looked at a pack of gum in 20 years.
I chew grown up gum that's some kind of mint flavor.
Grown-up gum.
It's like gum that's meant to be chewed by
Double
grown-ups.
mint after dark.
Yeah, it's not for kids. It's like spicy, minty. But I definitely will chew gum all day. But I'm somebody that leaves it in for like 4 hours until it's a tasteless.
Well, the flavor's gone in 10 minutes, right?
I know, but I just like it's just chewing my cud, basically.
It's evolutionary.
Keeps me busy. Probably burns 100 calories a day.
But maybe it makes you nervous. I found out I grind my teeth. My dentist called me the other day. And now she's making me like massage my jaw and cheekbone before I go to bed at night.
Oh, to like relax.
Yeah, I don't know if it works.
She called you?
Well, she called me on it. She didn't call me at home.
Ring, ring, ring.
To say like,
who's calling?
So we put a chip in your molars, and
Ken, I was looking over your files as I lay here in the bath.
She's trying to upsell me. She's going through all her clientele.
I want you to start massaging your face.
What are you wearing right now? What part of your face are you massaging? She gave me one of those little jade rollers. Do you know those things?
Yeah.
Which I don't think you're supposed to be using on your temples and chin.
No, I think you are.
Is that right?
Well, I mean, I got one for Christmas.
I thought they were for sore muscles.
Why? You have muscles in your face?
Hey, you're not wrong.
Huh?
You're not wrong.
Huh?
If I didn't, I wouldn't be talking now. The show would be a lot shorter.
Follow the science.
Do you have any idea why we were talking about toothpaste loyalty? Do you have any memory of this? It was only like 10 minutes ago.
Well, my peak toothpaste loyalty days are also peak presidential fitness test days. So I definitely lump them into like the 10 cults I was in as a preteen.
This is a show about baby boom and Gen X childhood, and all the way up through maybe elder millennials, I guess.
The elder millennials. I consult them all the time.
I've climbed to a mountain.
Elder millennials.
I climb to them as I pull myself above the lip of the mountain. I hear Blink 182. No.
What's my age again? You're an elder millennial.
The only reason we were talking about this is because I made the mistake of mentioning the gunks.
Yeah. Oh, the gunks.
Which are, in fact, the Shawangunk Mountains in southeastern New York State. It's a ridge that runs between, like, if you can picture kind of between the New Jersey border and the Catskills.
So all of the listeners that are within 100 miles of the Delaware River are like, come on, you guys.
And in the future, I mean, it's probably a peninsula. You're listening to us from the Shawangunk Peninsula next to the Manhattan Bay or whatever. But our story begins in the Gunks in the 1930s when an orthopedic surgeon named Hans Kraus, he's American. I don't know why I'm doing that. And meets a woman named Bonnie Prudden. Now, then as now, the Gunks are just not a haven, but a magnet, a center for American rock climbing and mountaineering. It's to this day there's that's it's close to the city.
Yeah, go up there for some rock climbing.
Good rock climbing. And Bonnie Prudden is one of the leading American mountaineers of her day. Apparently, she becomes kind of a quasi celebrity, and maybe it's a bit of a novelty then to have a woman, kind of a female Jack LaLanne type, who is also up in the the Germany got Leni Riefenstahl in the mountains, and we lucked out and we got Bonnie Prudden instead.
It's interesting. I was looking at a list of the tallest mountains in the United States just this morning.
I bet there are no Gunks.
Very few of them are in the Shawangunk Mountains.
Well, you have to go through like it's like the Himalayas. You got to go through a bunch of Alaskas before you even get to Whitney, much less.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you've got a few of the Whitney, Rainier. What's the Colorado one?
There are two. There are three that are above.
Elbert?
Yeah, Elbert, and then Mount Extraordinary or Mount
Supernumerary.
Mount really big. There's something called like Mount Massive or something in Colorado.
But there's between all these, there's like 30 Alaskan peaks.
Yeah, there's 10. The 10 biggest are all in Alaska.
Congratulations.
Booyah.
Well done.
Now, I have a question about this. When we were kids, did you not think that Mount Rainier was the tallest mountain in the contiguous states?
I don't think I ever did. I had a book. I had a Facts About the 50 States book, and I'm sure you had a few as well.
I did.
But I think this one was very clear that it went Whitney. Then is it Whitney, Elbert, Rainier, or is Rainier second?
I think the second one is in California too.
Sorry, is Washington the state with the third highest point after Alaska and California? Okay,
yeah. And Rainier is like one of the tallest mountains that stands prominent on its own.
Prominence wise, it's like Kilimanjaro like almost. Tallest mountains in the United States. I think, is Shasta taller than Rainier?
No. Come on.
I was just fooling, testing you.
It sits up there. Shasta and Hood are lower.
It's Whitney and then the 3 Colorado peaks and then Rainier, actually.
Oh, there's not a second one in California that's above the Colorado ones.
And it's so close. Like Mount Harvard in Colorado appears to have 4 feet on Rainier.
We should go up
and Mount Massive has 10 feet on Rainier. This is awful. Even Elbert is only 30 feet higher.
Yeah, we should go up and build a tower on Rainier like they did on the Sears Tower in Chicago and claim, oh no, the 200-foot tower is part of the mountain.
That has happened in mountain history, and I can't remember where, and it really was just for national pride. Like, if we just make this a little taller, now the tallest point in Surrey is taller than the tallest point in Sussex, and they just build a cairn of rocks.
Right. Every climber has to bring up a stone.
I mean, you can really just do it by reshaping the top, right?
Yeah, right.
Like
10 feet. Come on.
Rainier kind of flattens at the top. Why not give it a little Dairy Queen soft serve flourish on top, dollop, if you will.
That's the thing. If it wasn't a volcano, if those weren't craters, it'd be 16,000 feet tall, and it'd be a mic drop on all those Colorado mountains.
We should get. So, do you think? Does that mean before some eruption in the last millennium?
Yeah,
Rainier was taller than
16,000 feet
than Whitney or.
Take that, Gunks.
Well,
what's the tallest mountain in the Shaw Gunks is 2,200 feet.
Mountain in quotes.
Oh, mountain climbers. Okay, sure. Our story starts there.
Krause and Prudden are climbing in the Gunks in the 1930s. And it's not just that one's a surgeon and one's a rock climber. They are both also...
super sexy.
Oh, man. You would not believe what was going on in the Gunks at this time. It was like the Olympic Village meets Eyes Wide Shut up there. Hans and Bonnie could not keep their hands off each other. No, I have no idea. There is no sexy component to today's show. I'm sorry. I know you hate that.
Dang.
They're both physical fitness.
There never is with your shows.
I mentioned the hot lady in the Glade air freshener ad.
True.
They're also physical fitness advocates. This is a thing that already exists in the 1930s.
Physical fitness as a cult.
Yeah, and as a cultural marker. I mean, I guess you could go back all the way to Sparta.
The Olympics.
Exactly. But back then it was generally associated, just like the marathon and the Spartans, it was associated with military prowess.
Yeah, right.
A state needs to have a strong, fit youth because we'll use that to kill Athenians with.
Right. How else are you going to fight naked with discuses?
How else are you going to...
Or discus.
Disguise?
I think discus is probably plural too, right?
Masters of disguise. But like, I think the idea of fitness as not just a warrior class, but as a marker of, I don't know, cultural morality and just general well-being.
Is this a Kellogg era kind of?
Yeah. I mean, I think before Kellogg, you've got the YMCA.
Oh, right.
When
you think about the early 19th century, it was still the case that being portly was a sign of wealth.
Sure, because it meant you weren't about to die before the next harvest.
Right. And so when did that switcheroo? I mean, I've seen menus, like you remember the Doghouse here in Seattle, the old diner downtown where in the bar there was a an old guy playing the piano, and you could go in and name any song, and he would play it, and you could sing it. Did you ever go to the doghouse? You're looking at me with no comprehension.
I'm waiting for anything to happen in this story.
Oh, so it was such a great place. I mean, the food was terrible. It was well, now you would say it was there in the Amazon Triangle, but it's in the Denny Triangle.
Denny Triangle.
So just a couple of blocks from the 5 Point.
Yeah.
And it was a totally, totally seedy diner. Like the toast smelled like a wet dog. It wasn't good. It was great. And their menu, I think, in addition to having like hound dogs, like anthropomorphized hound dogs telling you to get the pancakes.
They weren't serving hound dogs, I hope.
But it was also the kind of menu that there was a line drawing of like a big fat guy in a 3-piece suit, and it was like, try the pork chops.
His buttons are popping off in comic fashion.
Yeah, but he's like, he's really happy to be 350 pounds, and that was a sign of his.
Jolly.
But he was also like a gourmet, right? He's eating at the doghouse. And he's a cartoon, but it was meant to communicate that this person, if you saw somebody like that, it meant that they had taste and that they liked to really dig into a hearty plate.
Joie de vivre also.
So that lasted until the 50s, because that's the menu's dated to then, presumably. At what point was the shift complete to like muscly, totally like no fat on their bodies people were the rich ones, and chubby people were the poor ones?
It probably started with the 20th century. I mean, it's the same story we're telling here. The fear of sedentary America, and in particular, media reaction to the rise of childhood obesity, maybe. Because I think that's when sugar. Yeah, that's when that kind of stuff starts to be demonized and stigmatized more. I mean, it's not that we used to. I mean, I don't know to what degree the whole idea about the Rubens-esque standard of beauty. I remember bringing that up to somebody once, and they said, "Oh, no, that's just what was in the paintings." But whoever that rich fat guy was with a rich fat Duchess wife, he probably had a bunch of skinny mistresses too. Like
I don't know,
and I don't know if I buy that. I don't think
I do.
Like the way just thinking about eyebrows recently, you see how culturally mediated all these beauty standards are, no matter how deep and immutable they feel to us.
Yeah, no, it feels like if you go look at Greek and Roman art, like the ladies aren't skinny.
This was like a pretty famous writer who I could totally out right now with his bad opinions, but I won't. I'm not going to do it.
Don't do it. That's not what this show is about. This isn't social media. If you think about Spanky, he was the star of Our Gang. It wasn't like...
You could never make Our Gang today.
You can't even talk about Our Gang today.
He would just have to be ripped. He'd have to look like Brendan Fraser in George of the Jungle. Spanky and Alfalfa would just be hot and shirtless all the time.
Just boom.
Couldn't keep their hands off each other. Or Darla. The thing about the YMCA is that's when you can see... I mean, when the YMCA started, it was really just like, hey, young man, you're coming to town. You've got a bunch of awful flop houses and brothels and gin joints you could stay at. But that's...
There's no need to feel down.
You don't need to feel down, but the Lord will, right?
Pick yourself off the ground.
God will feel down if you're staying in one of these cheap gin joints.
Indeed.
What if there was a clean Christian dormitory where you could park yourself while you make your way in the big city?
I like it. Have you ever stayed at a YMCA in a big city?
I've stayed as a kid when we went to Hong Kong. Sometimes we would stay at what was called the YMCA. But it was really just a bunch of clean, if Spartan, budget hotel rooms. It was basically a Best Western. And that's as close as I've come. Have you ever been in a...
Oh, for sure. My dad used to play basketball at the Seattle YMCA, and it had hotel rooms. You could live there. And
who was it? Who was living there?
Well,
in the
1940s, my dad said it was a very respectable place for a bachelor to reside. I think by the time I was there in the 1970s, it might have been a little bit more like sweat hogs in there.
Are they down on their luck?
Arnold Horshack.
Are they eating at the doghouse?
No, well, probably because it was great. That was where you could get a good pork chop. But no, I mean, not down on your luck. Bachelor that didn't yet, his sales job hadn't yet produced any real income.
Well, that's what ended up happening to the YMCA. It started out as just, a place where you wouldn't be sleeping in a puddle of vomit and sexual licentiousness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
hello, like the doghouse.
I didn't mean to say a puddle of sexual licentiousness, but I guess I did.
In the mouth of a G.I. Joe.
It's all happening.
It's
all happening in the mouth of a Crest user. But then it blossomed from that into a place where there would be a lot of clean, wholesome. The idea of a clean, wholesome place to live became overlaid with clean, wholesome recreation. And that's where it came to be the association with the YMCA with fitness.
Yeah, basketball.
This is also where a bunch of guys are getting out their urges by playing basketball and badminton instead of touching themselves. And that ties into the whole Kellogg nutrition boom of the late. That's happening in the 1870s. The YMCA is kind of becoming an athletic destination. And so that's the same time period as all those nutritionist weirdos.
Well, why didn't Tom Hanks and Peter Scolari live at the YMCA instead of moving into that that all women's hotel?
Or couldn't Jack Tripper, couldn't the Three's Company guy have lived there?
Seems like the YMCA was available to all those characters.
It's like how today all these movies fall apart if you add cell phones.
Right.
All 20th century sitcoms fall apart.
Where is she? I'll never find her. She was in a crowd.
I'm going to have to run to the airport. But now it's like, all these sitcoms all these people should just go to the YMCA.
Yeah, right. All fun things are dead now. All mystery, all excitement. It's all gone. Because
you can find any answer.
Yeah, you can just sit and play Wordle at an airport waiting for the girl you met one time because she has your.
In fact,
she's been tweeting at you for 2 years.
85% of all dates and hookups are some girl you have met between 0 and 1 times.
My sister went on an internet date last night with a guy she'd been talking to for months and really digs, but he wouldn't take off his mask. He's a science person. He's a computer person, and they were on some date.
At dinner?
Well, no, like they went. I don't know where they went. I didn't even think to ask, didn't you go to dinner? But she said he never took off his mask once in the date. And she was like, I get it, but also, really? We're on a date.
And on a date, you need to see that half of someone's face.
Do you have any G.I. Joes in your mouth? I'd like to know.
I mean, that could be a first question.
Yeah. Right?
How many cavity creeps do you have in your mouth? Right. I saw one of the Jeopardy writers the other day without a mask, and this is a guy I've seen, off and on for years, but have been working with for months.
Right.
And I saw him without his mask, and
You realized he had no chin.
No, I mean, he looked perfectly normal, but I realized I had kind of extrapolated a face somehow, and it wasn't that. And for a second, I was like, I don't know if that's him or not. I'm 100% not sure if that's that guy. And I had to hold up my hand like this.
I went to a restaurant not long ago and was flirting with the waitress, and it was one of those flirtations with the waitress that, in the old days at least, before I was
would not get you arrested. But today,
well, yeah, that. But no, a flirtation with a waitress that was trending to like, hey, what are you doing later type of flirtation. But neither of us could see the other's face. It was just an eyes based. I mean, we were making each other laugh, but you couldn't tell. I couldn't tell. You couldn't tell if she had vampire fangs.
The eyes are the windows of the soul.
Well, I know, but
the nostrils and the mouth are the
windows
of the cavity creeps.
At the end of the night, it was like, well, thanks. Okay, well, thanks. And it was pregnant, but there's no way you're going to ask somebody out if you haven't seen them. If you haven't seen below, you haven't even seen their nose.
Everyone should have a picture of the bottom half of their face, maybe on a little lanyard around their neck.
No, stenciled on the mask.
I mean, I've seen that, but it's creepy.
It is creepy.
What I'm saying is you take a picture of the bottom of your face and you just wear it as a lanyard all the time. And,
hold it up.
I can look at you and then my eyes are up here and my mouth's down here. And then I put it together.
No, you could. You actually should probably take the best picture from your Tinder, put it on a lanyard, and wear it around as you walk around. And you're like, this is me here. And here's my, this is me, but 20 pounds ago.
Yeah, I'm a little younger in this picture. The lighting is incredibly favorable for some reason. I have not been able to duplicate it, and I've tried. I got to say, we've gotten the YMCA created, but we haven't gotten too far with our story of Hans and Bonnie and the Gunks.
We went backwards. We're in the 19th century.
But, we've set up the fact that physical fitness exists. And now in America, it has kind of a moral and even religious component. You're
now or then?
Now in the story, in the early 20th century.
Okay, right.
We've gotten to that point where it's not just, we need a fit warrior class, and now it's
virtuous.
Yeah, now it's virtuous. Your body's a temple.
Because it seems... Because being chubby is indulgent. Your appetites aren't under control.
It is a sign that you're giving in to whatever your body wants, and part of Cartesian dualism is just that the body is endlessly naughty, and the soul should be slapping it around with a ruler.
I like that,
and not in a naughty way.
No, I like the naughty body, and I like the naughtier soul.
The mean soul?
Yeah, the mean, slappy soul and the naughty body. Did you see the Swiss guy that won the downhill in the Olympics?
No. Does he have a naughty body?
He's chubby. He's a chubster. And fast and like a bad boy.
Well, I mean, a lot of our conceptions and misconceptions about fatness are part of this story about fitness as well. I think at first it's not about weight, maybe because you don't see as much visible range in body size then as now.
Right. Kind of like when you walk around in Germany and you're like, everybody's stout, but nobody's really heavy.
I mean, honestly, class being what it is, you can see it in America just by taking a road trip to a different county, honestly.
Right. Or going to a different, like leaving the football game and going to the opera.
Switch from Costco to Walmart. Yeah, I mean, there's a strong economic and cultural component, unfortunately.
Wait, were you throwing out Costco as like the higher grade of store?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
I mean, higher grade of box store for sure.
Sure.
I mean, what would you have said? When you go from Tiffany's to Walmart, what's your example of America's left-leaning upper middle class box store?
If you took a UFO to Tiffany's and then to Walmart, they would not believe that they were the same species.
That's because they're from Star Wars planets where it's all the same. All the planet looks the same. It's all one biome and there's one city.
But the people at Tiffany's are like grotesquely thin, and then
exactly. So in the 30s, in the Gunks, when Krauss and Prudden are climbing together, talking about fitness, they're talking. They stay in touch, and in the 40s, Krauss, together with a collaborator, a Dr. Sonia Weber, starts working on physical fitness testing. And this is where the idea of science meets fitness. Because
was Krauss the mountain climber or
he's the orthopedic surgeon.
Orthopedic. Okay.
He and Weber wanted to figure out how to evaluate health, physical fitness with science.
Right, in the American way.
Yeah, because we're going to do it with efficiency and calipers, and a lot of bad stuff happens at this time, and this might be one of them.
Did they measure the size of your brain?
Do you remember The Simpsons where they just bump Homer's gut and they time it till it stops jiggling? And that's how you're supposed to... That's a measure of physical fitness.
Like how long before this becomes a eugenics situation?
I mean, I think it kind of already is, right? I mean, isn't that inherent in like, who are the, I mean, no, I don't want to say they're not. I'm sure their goal would be, how do we get everybody this way? Because that's what it becomes.
Right.
But at first there is some sense of, who are the fitter children? And Krauss and Weber develop what is called, for obvious reasons, the Krauss-Weber test, which is a 90-second way to look at a child. This was for, kids and adolescents, and see if they have some basic measure of physical fitness, strength and
90
flexibility.
Seconds.
In 90 seconds. And that's not enough time to wait for Homer to stop jiggling. So what you do is you do 6 different tests, and it's pass-fail. You have the subject do 1 sit-up with their knees bent, 1 sit-up with their knees extended. Then you have them lie on their back and see if they can raise their feet 8 inches and hold that for 10 seconds. Then you flip them around, they lie on their stomach, and you see if they can do the worm, basically raise their head and shoulders for 10 seconds.
Do the worm.
And then they stay on their stomach, and then they see if they can raise their legs for 10 seconds from that. Prone? Supine? Which is it? On your stomach is... supine, I think. And then you have them stand up. They have to hold their legs straight, their knees straight, knees together. Can they touch the floor for 3 seconds?
I can do all those things.
So yesterday I tried this, and I found that I failed the test.
No, wait. Supine is face up.
Oh.
Prone is face down.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Which one do you think I failed just standing in my office yesterday? Do you have a guess?
You failed one.
Yeah, I did.
What were the last two?
Lie on your stomach and raise your legs for 10 seconds. Stand up with your knees together and touch the floor for 3 seconds.
Stand up with your knees together and touch the floor for 3 seconds is the one you could not do.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I am not doing enough yoga, apparently.
No, I couldn't do that. That's the one I couldn't do either.
Let's see it right now.
All right. Here we go. Stand up with knees together and touch the floor for 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Knees together.
You're like 3 inches off the ground. You're getting closer.
What if I can bend? Can I bend my knees?
No, that's why the knees have to be straight. If you can bend your knees, it's extremely easy to touch the floor. You're like a different color than you were a second ago.
Touch the floor with your knees together.
So this seemed like it would be like, once I read it, I was like, oh, great, I can pass the Krauss-Weber. And then I immediately failed. But you know what? I did it again that night, and I could touch the floor.
Huh.
And that is actually one of the fundamental criticisms of the Krauss-Weber is that these are skills, more than raw measures.
Oh, you can build them, in other words.
Yeah, and not just by exercise, not just by actually getting stronger core muscles or more flexibility. You just have to, some of these are unfamiliar movements, and you have to learn you can do them.
Well, there are also people that can put their palms flat on the floor with no effort at all.
Yeah, I mean, you can, what I'm saying is without a lifestyle change, you can actually get better at this test. It's like the SAT. Like the second time you take it, you just automatically get better.
All those people that can put their palms flat on the floor, I'd like to see them get a can of tomatoes down from on top of the cupboard on top of the refrigerator. That should be one of the tests too. I'd pass that with flying colors.
Is that because you're taller
yes.
than they are?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I got it. There are other ways to test for tallness besides putting a can of tomato soup in a cupboard.
You have to be strong enough to pull the soup down and not, fall, not collapse.
The other day I was changing a light bulb on our stairs. You know how it's like the worst place to try to change a light bulb?
Yeah. How do you get a ladder?
I'm up on some step ladder that's just barely tall enough to touch it and not really enough to get purchase on it.
And you're thinking, this is how I die.
I really am, because I am now at the age where I don't want to go to tiptoes on a step ladder anymore.
You heard about...
Bob Saget?
Bob Saget.
I know.
How he died.
I know.
Mysterious fall.
And then I apparently didn't know it was bad and just went to sleep.
Bonked his head, went to sleep.
That terrified me when I heard the similar story about, do you remember when Liam Neeson's wife, the same thing happened to her, Natasha Richardson?
No, she bonked her head?
They're out skiing. She bonks. She gets up. She's fine. An hour later in the lodge, she passes out because there was some brain swelling, bleeding embolism thing that nobody knew about.
Whoa.
Ticking time bomb. And that's why I don't ski.
I get closed head injuries all the time.
How often? How many times a day would you say?
It's because of my neighborhood stick fight team. We practice Wednesdays and Fridays.
Yeah, you're out LARPing with the gang. So the genius of this test is you can do it in 90 seconds and it's pass-fail. And so Bonnie Prudden, who has been climbing with Krauss since the 30s, decides she's going to do a mass study of it. She takes 4,000 U.S. kids, administers the Krauss-Weber, and finds that most of them can't do it.
Whoa.
Only 42% of Americans can pass this test.
Did she throw the other 58 in a pit and cover them with lye?
Yeah, eugenics. That's what's going on here. That's what's important. And here's what really changes history. Then she does it to 3,000 Swiss kids.
Oh, no.
And maybe they are jolly yodeling folks like our skier friend.
Sure, but they're chasing goats all day.
They are wiry from chasing goats, I guess. They're leathery Switzers. Only 8% of them fail. There's a 92% pass rate when she does it on 3,000 Swiss kids.
In the 1930s, to do fitness tests of the Swiss and compare them to the Americans or anyone.
This is actually post-war now, by the way.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
These are boomers.
But still, I feel like it's bad. The war should have given us a little pause in terms of
maybe that's why she picked the Swiss.
Are your children instead of
yeah, the Swiss were neutral. not on the guys the side that got starved, not on the side that got starved after.
Well, so this is the world we grew up in, particularly one where we were constantly being compared to Europeans as Americans, and they were always just naturally beating us in every metric.
No matter what we do.
They have one glass of wine and one cigarette a day, and they
can run a marathon.
That's right, and they can lift up a car with one hand. Meanwhile, we...
Look at our math scores.
Yeah.
And we can't find the Atlantic Ocean on a map.
We beat them in the war, but it was just, I don't know, dumb luck, I guess.
That was it. That was our last hurrah. And this being in the 1950s, you can see what some of the narratives will be. Television has gotten invented. The generation gap has gotten invented.
Candy bars.
The greatest generation that won the war for us is watching their kids have a more comfortable childhood and are thinking...
I don't want to leave it to Beaver.
They're soft.
Yeah.
They're all some mean Great Santini dad who thinks their kids are soft.
I built this. I don't want to leave it to that dumb Walter Haskell.
Yeah, they're all crew-cutted Robert Patrick from Peacemaker dads. And so this very much reinforces this idea. And of course, as I've said later on, the science has kind of been seen to be bogus. Not just that these are not pure measures of any kind of absolute strength or aptitude or fitness, but also that apparently they're very strongly correlated with the calisthenics that all European children do as a part of their schooling.
Oh, like the Japanese do before they go to work in their auto factory.
Not just in the factory, in their advertising firm.
They go out.
You get on the loudspeaker and everybody does their nose touches and their jumping jacks.
Yeah, singing a song of fealty to the company.
Singing the company anthem, sure. So they were taking Swiss kids who did all these kind of tests routinely, and they were much better at it than American kids who had never had to lay on the floor, belly down, and try to hold their head or their legs in the air, you know?
Yeah.
So they were getting a lot more fails. So now we know that this was bogus, but at the time, you can see how the element of international competition is galvanizing. It's not just that our kids are getting soft, it's that...
Yeah, the Russians are putting a man in space.
The other countries are not, and specifically, some of our geopolitical enemies are not. You mentioned the Cold War, and that's absolutely what happens. President Eisenhower conveys, you just got delivered a cup of coffee.
I sure did.
This is, Omnibus has taken a domestic turn.
It really has.
In recent weeks.
I didn't used to get deliveries of anything down here. And the last time you were here, we each got like pasta delivered, like a spaghetti.
Yeah, we had carbonara.
Yeah, carbonara.
Even.
Brought to us in the middle of our show. Things have changed. I don't know what I'm doing right.
Do you have that button that LBJ had to give him a Mountain Dew or whatever?
No, if I pushed a button and it buzzed somewhere in this house, the response would be another closed head injury. No, this is all like just nice behavior, and I don't know. I must be nicer now.
It's a little lesson for life. If you don't demand carbonara, it comes to you. It's like the Buddhist view of carbonara.
Carbonara in particular is not a thing you should demand. It's very luxurious, right? Like you could say, I need some crackers. You can't say like, I need a...
This is the opposite of me being impressed by Costco and you rolling your eyes. Carbonara is peasant food, John.
I know, but in terms of like a 5,000 calorie like boost of sauce.
That's true.
Yeah.
It was not what I should have been eating in the middle of the day, that's for sure. So President Eisenhower, aware that America's children could be just run roughshod over by strong Soviet youth brigades.
It always comes back to Eisenhower.
He convenes kind of a White House conference of educators and doctors and fitness advocates. You know, Willie Mays is there. You know, prominent athletes are there.
Chaired by Richard Nixon, famous fitness.
And Bonnie Prudden comes in and shares her scaremongering results about the softness of American children. In fact, the quote is, "Many youngsters today have no bodies," she tells them.
Yikes.
Which is alarming. Alarming news, if true.
It was the era of Casper the Ghost.
That's exactly right. Many youngsters today, like Slimer and Casper, have no bodies. So in 1956, as a result of this kind of the beginning of America's worries about our soft, sedentary, popsicle eating youth who don't have they have all the easy things that we didn't have as kids, but now look at them.
Washing machines and toasters.
They're not out just, climbing trees and beating up the Greek immigrant kid.
That's right.
Like we were. Ike convenes the President's Council on Youth Fitness, which the following year, 1957, pilots what is called the Presidential Fitness Challenge, which kind of turns the Krauss-Weber test into a systematic thing that all American children should try, a challenge to see if they can stand up to their Soviet equivalent, I guess.
Immediately causing 20% of American children to have a total inferiority complex that lasts the rest of their lives.
20's got to be low.
Yeah, maybe 60%.
It's over half. It's got to be over half, right? Let's talk about our memories of the physical presidential fitness test in a second. But somewhere along the way in this post-war environment with a ex-general as president, the Krauss-Weber test, kind of a ascetic set of European calisthenics, morphs into a set of exercises that seems more like military basic training. It's not quite the set that you and I might remember, but it's very similar. There are pull-ups, or for younger kids or for the girls, flexed arm hangs, where you just hang from the pull-up bar but don't actually have to do anything except
flex your arms.
Except keep muscle tension, yeah. There are sit-ups. There's a standing broad jump. There's a shuttle run, back and, 2 lines 30 feet apart. You go back and forth. So it's a test of both speed and agility.
Biathlon.
There's a 50-yard, there's a biathlon. There's a sword fighting challenge. No, there's a 50-yard dash.
Defuse a bomb.
There's a softball throw, which very much is like something you would do at, grenade exercises at Fort Bragg or whatever.
Overhand softball or underhand softball?
I would assume overhand, right? Like for distance. So I remember when we did the softball throw at my field day, I realized I could underhand it further than the jocks were doing overhand. And I did my little
Ken breaks the system.
Rick Barry underhand softball throw, and everybody made fun of me.
Sure.
That's the end of that story. But, like many stories of presidential fitness.
Like many of your stories, everyone made fun of me.
And then a 600-yard run. And you can see how some of these are
600 yards.
It's not the mile run. What is that?
No, that's 6 football fields.
Yeah, but like I run a 5K a few times a week. That's not a huge run.
For me, it would be.
It's a third of a mile.
For me, I would, by the end, my footprints would be like 3 inches into the grass. Kaboosh,
And they'd also
kaboosh.
be like just inches apart. By the time you and I did it was a mile run.
Yeah, I remember.
So you can see how these are not just simple calisthenics anymore where you can, somebody can check a thing. It really is like, pull-ups are like getting out of a foxhole. And throwing a softball is like throwing a grenade, and wind sprints are like, it's all become weirdly militarized.
Like the Scouts.
The Scouts started out as weirdly militarized. It took a while for calisthenics to get there. And, within a few years, it's morphed into the stuff we grew up with, which was pretty steady for decades. There's curl-ups. So, there's kind of modified sit-ups. There's pull-ups, push-ups. And for most of the time, it's either how many can you do in a minute or how many I think with curl-ups, it's like how many real ones can you do in a minute or how many modified ones can you do with no break. Same for pull-ups and push-ups. There's the dreaded sit and reach.
Ugh.
Do you remember this?
Ugh.
Put your legs in a V and lean forward and see how far you can get
That's
your
as bad
fingers.
as trying to touch the ground.
It's worse. And it's also not scientific at all because it varies widely with the length of your legs and the length of your arms.
Yeah.
There's the shuttle run, and then now it's not 600 yards. It's a full mile run. And boy, that was my least favorite day of PE. I'll tell you that.
600 yards is almost 1/3 of a nautical mile.
Do you think that's how they tried to sell it to America's youth?
Look, it's only 1/3 of a nautical mile.
Look, President Kennedy swam all the way to an island with towing 5 men on a rope. And Kennedy is, of course, a big part of this story because
he's hopped up on goofballs.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the irony.
Because his back is broken.
This is all about the glowing good health of John F. Kennedy, perhaps our least healthy president ever, and we had one with polio not that long ago. By the time Eisenhower leaves office, it's too late. We have this militarized test for all America's youth in place, and President-elect John Kennedy, let's see if I can find it, writes a piece for Sports Illustrated. A weird thing for a president-elect to do then and now.
Right. Saying, I definitely don't have Addison's disease.
That's the headline. I do not have Addison's disease.
That's wonderful. Why don't you do your Kennedy more?
I did it on Jeopardy once and everybody hated it. Now I'm scarred. And the story ends with everyone making fun of me. The piece he writes it's him and Jackie on the cover on the deck of a sailboat, of course.
Right, of course.
And the story is called The Soft American. And it's all about young people needing physical soundness and vigor. Mm-hmm. And it starts out just exactly the way you'd expect, like talking about the ancient Spartans and the Olympics. Beginning more than 2,500 years ago, from all quarters of the Greek world, men thronged every 4 years to the sacred grove of Olympia.
I love it.
And it goes on, and it really explicitly makes then he says, look, we're not at war now, since the police action in Korea, he makes the point that this is not a military thing, but this is actually the physical vigor of our citizens is one of America's most precious resources. It's
about fighting your brothers in flag football on the front lawn of Hyannisport.
That's exactly what it is. And it seems, it's after the election, so you can't say it's a campaign tactic, but really think about how much of the appeal of Kennedy was young, attractive guy, young, attractive wife, touch football games on the lawn.
Well, and also the main hawkish criticism of him was that he was a lefty, soft on communism, not a tough guy. And this was a way to turn it around and make it new Camelot.
Physical fitness is not only one of the most important keys to a healthy body, it is the basis of dynamic and creative intellectual activity. So, without any support, he really just says that the number of sit-ups your kids can do is just key to not just the American economy, but culture and intellectual life. And this is a national problem and requires national action. So, he puts forth in this article all the things his White House is going to do to create awareness and counsels about physical soundness.
Your Kennedy is really sort of a Teddy Kennedy.
Is that right?
Which I really admire. It's the accent you don't hear as often.
It's also getting worse the longer I do it. So let's wrap this portion of the show up.
Okay.
And this leads to this. And first of all, let's admit it. Jack Kennedy probably did not write any of this. It's almost certainly Ted Sorensen or whoever it was who wrote Profiles in Courage.
I knew Jack Kennedy, and that was not Jack Kennedy.
But as soon as he gets into the White House, a massive PR campaign begins. He goes on 50-mile hikes and,
he does not.
There's pictures. Bobby's there wearing brown leather loafers.
Sure. Small tennis shorts.
He wants the cabinet to come with him. There's all these kind of photo ops of our healthy, vigorous president.
General LeMay out there with a cigar.
Puffing and puffing and puffing. He's like the color of a raspberry. The funny thing is, as you've pointed out, Kennedy was in terrible shape. He had back problems dating back to Harvard.
Colitis. Addicted to speed.
I guess the back problems got worse after PT 109.
Right.
And then because he was this rich elite, scion of an Eastern family, when he came back from the war, he got all this experimental Mayo Clinic stuff tried on him that made it all worse. If he had just done what everybody, whatever the...
Better than his sister got.
Oh, hey.
Too soon.
Hey. The thing that your family doctor would have told you to do at a clinic, he went and got all this experimental stuff that made it all worse.
Right, but Hitler injections into his buttocks too.
He'd probably be alive today. Have you heard the theory that he wouldn't be alive today?
He could have ducked that bullet?
Because that's exactly it.
What?
Yeah.
He could have Mark Wahlberg'd it?
So he habitually wore a back brace because he was in such awful shape and didn't want people to know, FDR style. And he was wearing a back brace in Dallas.
What?
So the first shot hits him in the neck and he stays bolt upright because he's got this infrastructure. He's got this exoskeleton.
He could have survived the neck shot?
I think the idea is the neck shot was survivable, and the if not reflex, the normal response to getting shot in the neck would be to just fall forward immediately, and then the headshot never could have happened.
He springs back up because he's spring loaded.
Yeah.
Oh wow! I need to watch all that JFK conspiracy stuff again. I've been so distracted by chemtrails that I've lost all the plot points.
I don't think this is like a what was his name? Jim Garrison era conspiracy theory. This is more like
more recent.
Yeah, recent orthopedic experts, looking at his files and you get some headlines if you say,
sure,
he might never have been assassinated. Speaking of the Kennedy assassination, which as we all know was engineered by his successor, President Lyndon Johnson. No, that's not true. But when Johnson enters the White House, he wants to continue, of course, the Kennedy Physical Fitness Initiative. And now for the first time, he has tied to the test an award.
Oh.
Now, if you're in the top 15th percentile, you get a certificate.
Right.
And the idea is, just to gamify it and reward excellence. But you can see the problem with doing physical fitness this way. Like
now, 80% of American kids have an inferiority complex.
You have you've basically said 85% of American kids are bad. And even by its very nature, by the fact that you're going to have PE teachers run these tests to all kids in turn. And guess what? The gym coach knows who can pass these tests and who can't. And he's still going to watch some, kid huffing and puffing in the last half of the mile run.
Right.
And watch somebody whose VSIT cannot, get past their thighs.
The first 6 kids that get picked in any kickball game don't need another certificate.
Finally, they'll be told they're okay. And it's just a terrible idea to make physical fitness a basis of comparison anyway.
Right.
Because you're never going to feel.
That's what every boot camp is.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you're giving somebody measurable goals so they can say like, well, last time I did this many sit-ups. Let's see how many I can do this year. And then they're proud of their progress. But because everybody's being tested at once in the awful environment that is American physical education, you're just creating generational trauma.
Yeah. And there's only 4% of kids who couldn't pass the test, but are motivated to try and pass it
exactly.
next time.
Yeah, who's not good at this stuff, but is really going to be in their bonnet.
Oh my God, I really need to do more sit-ups.
If President Kennedy thinks this is what I need.
Yeah, it's just the kids that are collecting baseball cards. The rest of us looked up from our copies of Mad Magazine, or in your case, the encyclopedia, or in my case, a Mad Magazine tucked into an encyclopedia, and went, oh God, do I have to?
What were your memories of doing I was in a private international school in South Korea, and we still did the damn presidential fitness test.
Oh, it was all over us in the mid-'70s. But, the mid-'70s were also a time when there was all this new education kind of pushback. There were all of a sudden, not hippies, but
it should be more free to be you and me in the school.
Yeah, child psychology, I guess, became
post-Spock America.
So it was just like the competing sides of any school, right? The gym teacher and the sociology teacher and the history teacher were like presidential physical fitness, and then the debate teacher and the English teacher were like, oh, how do you feel about that?
Do you remember doing these events, these 6 events?
I never got the certificate. I do remember them, and they were horrible. At some point, they introduced rope climbing.
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't climb a rope. I still can't climb a rope.
I still don't believe anyone can climb a rope. I think it's CGI.
My friend Mike Squires, who was in the Marine Corps, Mike,
mm-hmm.
guitarist of many rock and roll bands. Mike is not a small person. He's a chubster even, and he can go right up a rope and not even use his feet.
It just makes you think there's, different kinds of innate body types and aptitudes that...
Yeah, strong people and then the rest of us. I mean, and I'm strong, right? I can move a 3-man boulder, but I can't climb a rope.
I remember my dad saying when this stuff came out when he was a kid, he was the first generation to have this Eisenhower Kennedy era testing. And he was kind of he's a skinny guy, but he was like wiry. And for whatever reason, he was just born with the innate ability to do all this stuff. When I was a kid, when he was in his 30s, he could do the thing where you sit down on the floor, put your palms flat on the floor, and you can lift up your legs straight out in front of you.
Yeah.
And, that's not
gymnast stuff.
That guy wasn't in the gym an hour a day getting to do that. Like that was just a party trick for him.
Right.
And
my friend in high school, Eddie Hakala, who was on the wrestling team, could do a standing backflip. The most amazing thing I ever saw. But Eddie could do a standing backflip when he was 50. He can still do a standing backflip.
Wow.
And I would think every time he would launch into it, he's got to be thinking, is this my last standing backflip? In which case,
he's probably
ow.
He's probably thinking it was the last one, my last standing backflip.
But like when you're 16, if you land on your head, it's like, wow, whatever.
Yeah.
But when you're 55, like you don't want to miss.
For me, the most traumatic event was definitely the pull-ups.
Oh.
The standards for this stuff were unreasonably high, and they would tell you, they'd be like, oh, well, you're a 15-year-old boy. You should be able to run a 6.5 minute mile. No. And then it would be like, well, and you should be able to do 14 pull-ups or whatever. And kid after kid would just dangle from the bar.
Yeah.
And
even that hurts.
It's just awful. And you're not even like today I can do, today I actually take care of myself a little bit and I can do a few pull-ups, but not when I was 14. I would just be hanging there like, oh, this sucks. Everybody's looking at my belly button.
Everybody's looking at you. I definitely at some point could run a 7.5 minute mile when I was on the cross country team. And at my best, I could do 13 pull-ups. But now, if I did 2 pull-ups, I would be. And then I couldn't do a pull-up. I couldn't even look at a pull-up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my athletic friends were also just hanging from the bar like me.
They did the rings where you'd set off on a ring and you're supposed to grab the next ring.
That's how you know this stuff is innate.
I fell onto the floor.
You can go to any playground today and watch 3-year-olds do those rings.
Yeah.
And, some people will just never do it. They didn't come out of the egg that way.
At my daughter's school, kindergarten and first grade, there was a little girl that decided she was going to skip every other bar on the swinging bars, and I watched her get up and work at it. I sat on the playground day after day watching her go for it, and until her hands were bleeding. And she never looked anything other than completely determined. And my own daughter, if she had trouble using a knife to cut her macaroni and cheese, would throw the knife on the floor and then go into the other room. And I was like, well, look at Lily's stick-to-itiveness.
Grit.
And it was just, it's like stick-to-itiveness also a thing some kids have.
That's the thing they say you should reward kids for.
Stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah, like if your kid hits a home run or gets an A on a test, you shouldn't be like, oh, you're so talented or you're so smart, because then they think,
yeah, no, you're describing me to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, good job. You don't have to work.
You should really be like, I saw you work really hard on that. Good job.
You should be a podcaster.
I don't even care what the grade was. So I don't think, a generation was, multiple generations were scarred, or at least have really unhappy memories of fitness.
Even if I see that logo, the Presidential Physical Fitness logo, it causes me anxiety even now.
And it's awful because that kind of imprinted on them and became their lifelong approach to fitness and exercise, was just feeling bad about yourself because, and during the Cold War, that you were letting America down.
Yeah.
Because you were dangling from the pull-up bar or your V-sit sucked.
Well, and there was a vibe about it, right? That this was going to determine something about your future.
It's so funny that it's got the president's name on it. Yeah. The guy with the busiest job in the world also cares how many push-ups you can do.
It's got a freaking eagle on it. An eagle that's holding arrows in one of its talons.
Think what a funny time that was when, saying the president wants you to do this was the most inspirational thing you could tell a kid. Can you imagine today if you were like, President Trump wants you to, run a mile, or President Biden wants you? There'd be no faster way to turn off most of the class.
They'd pull one of their earbuds out and go, what?
Brandon? Brandon said what?
President Brandon?
So, and even though I never felt particularly scarred by it, it did make me think that this kind of stuff was bull and no fun.
Was there an equivalent among Korean kids? Did you see them out doing calisthenics at their Korean schools?
I have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised if there were very regimented daily calisthenics in those schools. It was right around the time Korea had decided, wait, nobody's Nobody's cared about archery since the Swiss 150 years ago.
Nobody's buying our cars.
We have a niche. Let's get really good at archery. And then that was the beginning of them taking over the world.
Oh, right.
And they went on and were like, well, why not everything else? Pop music, the Oscars, nighttime dramas. But it started with archery.
I was watching the Olympics and watching the Chinese curling team take on the Italians, the ultimate victors. Spoiler alert. And I was like, the Chinese have a curling team. Huh. All right.
They have ice.
How long before they're the best in the world, the Chinese curlers?
Well, in 2013, as late as 2013, the presidential fitness test was being administered. That was when it was finally mothballed and replaced with a more general President's Council on
being happy.
Well, I mean, that's when the idea of exercise had kind of modified into not just how can we regiment it and regulate it, but like, how can we actually make people enjoy it?
Well, I also felt this way about the food pyramid. If you look at the food pyramid and you look at what most of us eat, it's all in the top little, like, have one of these a day.
I guess you could have a carb if you know,
and
if
then
necessary.
Then have 17 helpings of fresh vegetables. And I remember as a kid, like, oh, this is an impossible standard to live up to.
But the food pyramid's only gotten worse. And the food pyramid's gotten more demanding.
Has it?
I think so. When we were kids, there were like the 4 groups.
Cheese?
Eat a quarter bread, a quarter cheese, a quarter meat, and a quarter veggies. And I was like, sure.
Sure, I can do that. If corn and carrots are veggies.
And now it really is like, if you're starving on a desert island, you might have to eat bread, but I hope it's whole grain, you know?
Right.
Half your plate should be, my wife's just, the other night, we were eating dinner the other night, and she was like, make sure half your plate is vegetables. And it just seems so sad.
It's punishment.
You've seen a TV dinner. There's a little tiny quarter that's vegetables.
Green beans.
Everything else is supposed to be gravy covered things.
Half your plate is vegetables. How did your kids reply to that? They pulled out one earbud and went, what?
And well, we asked which vegetables qualified, and she further clarified that it had to be non-starchy vegetables.
No potatoes.
No corn, potatoes.
No corn.
Even like even
beans.
Yeah, even peas and beans maybe no good. But at the same time as the food pyramid has gotten more demanding, probably as a result of more awareness and scaremongering about weight gain and obesity, our relationship with exercise has gotten much more
pathological.
No, like individual.
Oh.
You know, it's at least the way it's taught now. It's like we would be so happy if our kids just looked up from their phone for 1 second.
Oh,
like,
you're talking about with kids, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what if you exercised? What if you just walked once a day? Just do something active, you know?
Well, body positivity has changed the conversation entirely, right? There's so much judgment implicit in all of this stuff you're talking about. And we don't judge kids according to any of these standards. But my daughter got a Fitbit a month ago. And all it does is, Fitbit stuff. It's basically a wristwatch that counts how many steps. And I had nothing to do with the Fitbit. It showed up as a gift from someone else at Christmas. But I remember feeling like the Fitbit kind of did encourage me to every day remember to like, hey, have I walked?
It's gamification.
And she has gamified it without, I was just like, oh, your Fitbit. What is it? What did it say today?
But you give a kid a device with a score. And,
exactly.
Yeah, a certain kind of kid is going to
now she's like at 12,000 steps a day and really, really just on her own, kind of excited about it.
I mean, I'm kind of horrified looking back at what the presidential fitness test was. And to me, it does make much more sense that like, if kids associate exercise with fun, they'll just be in better shape and be happier in general and healthier in general. But I mean, that's not the way we run the rest of school, like the rest of school is not just like, who cares if you do well or if you, what's important is that you liked the experience of hearing about science or reading a book. Like, I don't know what to do with that realization, like, does that mean we are doing school wrong? That school really should be, you should enjoy whatever you're doing.
I mean, maybe on Jeopardy, you should, when people are like, what is the, Bismarck? Be like, well,
tell me anything else about Bismarck and I'll give you credit.
Yeah. It seems like you're really into Bismarck. Like, that's cool. The real answer was Mitterrand.
But I should give them style points.
Sure. I mean, in my case, by no metric did I succeed in school. None,
You graduated.
Barely, and it was a cheat. I graduated because the teachers were like, "Look, we don't want you back. Like, we're going to give you credit for this class you got an F in." So in no way, I guess SATs, but in every other way, I was a failure by any of the Kennedy era standards of a child. But here I am, doing fine,
functioning adult,
and so and not driven by competition really. Like, none of the choices I've made in life have been driven by competition.
Yeah, I think we've generally learned that's not the way to live. It'll always lead to discontent and angry ghosts in your heart.
Yeah, angry ghosts. Trying to avoid those. I mean, but I still have all the voices that are like, you couldn't pass the physical fitness test. They're in my head.
I wonder if kids today do not have that, or if they are just doing it to themselves. Like, because they'll still see the differences. They'll still see their friend that can do the rings, or their friend that's on the ice skating, or is really good at ice skating, or their friend that's on the basketball team.
Well, that's the thing about the change in conversation. There's a kind of defensiveness in the culture now. You see somebody on the rings and you're like, well, I can't do that, but it's not important. Like I'm praised anyway. So it's hard to know.
We're even suspicious of it, like not just physical fitness, but any kind of virtue. Oh, what's that? Oh, she says she's a vegetarian now. Like,
yeah, right.
Like weirdo. Or he goes to church. What kind of weirdo hypocrite is he really?
Well, and that's the problem for those of us, you and I, who were raised in the kind of weird shadow of this. It's hard to know. I mean, there's a suspicion that we have that maybe young people don't, where it's like, really? Don't you want to even try?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the story of standards going from, it would be great if you could do 14 pull-ups all the way down to touch grass once a day.
And look at grass out the window.
At least know what it looks like. But like now that I mention it, I realize that when I look at some of what my kids do in high school, a lot of it is like geared toward, hey, if you're enjoying it, this is good. Like,
yeah.
Like they can pick their, they need to read this many books, but they can pick their own books. And if they want to pick
graphic novels,
if they want to pick graphic novels, that's fine. Or, I was doing study problems with my kid the other night, and they were all like each wackier than the last. Like, Dr. Doofenshmirtz wants to put lasers on starfish and sea slugs. It costs 10 cents more to put a laser on a sea slug, but he has 150 more starfish-shaped lasers.
And this is your kid in graduate school. And that concludes the Presidential Fitness Test. Entry 983.PR3117. Certificate number 39398 in the omnibus. Futurelings, in the unlikely event that you have actual physical bodies.
The young people have no bodies.
You can use those bodies to type in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Omnibus Project. If you have no bodies, surely you do it with your minds.
If you have no bodies, you can't touch grass.
Can't touch grass.
Visualize grass.
But you can think of grass.
You can waft over it.
Maybe you can be grass.
Whoa. Maybe you are grass.
Hello.
Maybe if we're speaking to future grass-like organisms, every time you say touch grass, you're basically saying masturbate.
Bend over, spread your legs, and see how far you can reach.
What would you... Yeah. You're probably not a species that can do the V-sit.
I can't really reach that far, just down to this pleasure center.
Or maybe they have 10 tentacles and they can beat us all at the V-sit.
Right. They can touch the ground, they can touch their head, touch their little noses all at the same time. You can find at Ken Jennings and at John Roderick in various places. You can email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. You can mail us your old presidential physical fitness patches, and I will have someone stitch them together into a quilt, a presidential fitness quilt.
That would be a great idea.
That I will use in my room as, in mockery of the whole enterprise.
Except everybody who actually passed the presidential fitness test
still has it on their jacket.
Immediately died in Vietnam.
Oh.
That's a little dark.
Ouch. You can mail us things at P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington 98155. You can share your experiences with physical fitness with a group of fitness enthusiasts over at Omnibus Futurelings on Facebook.
Hold on, you mentioned the mailbox.
Yeah.
I'm opening a box from Chris from Bakersfield, who says, and this is helpful, I'm the one that sent the RC Cola flat cans.
Oh, nice.
It is good, because sorry, Chris from Bakersfield doesn't ring a bell.
Thanks for remembering us, because I was looking at those the other day.
Remindbering?
Yeah.
So now we know who you are, Chris. Here are a few items for you guys. One, in the yellow envelope, this is a treasure trove, referencing the Universal Studios backlot fire.
Okay. So, yeah. Does he have some ashes?
The ashes of the original masters to a Cleo Lane record or something? Oh, it's souvenirs of the Universal Studios tour. It's a King Kong.
Oh, look at that.
Universal Studios tour coming June 1986.
It's a magnet.
Yeah, but it's a vintage 80s era magnet, and then 2 pictures of the early King Kong ride.
Okay.
Wasn't it the King Kong ride that started the fire?
I don't remember. Oh, these are actual photographs taken by our friend. These are not postcards. These are home photos.
And one regarding the Amargosa Opera House. This is more...
Which is kind of a Bakersfield. It's closer to Bakersfield than it is to here.
Yeah, and he sent us a borate dictionary. It appears to be a printout of a glossary of borax-related terms and words in alphabetical order. Oh, a lot of them are, I see a lot of them are products made using borates. Graphite crucibles.
Sure.
Used in glazing crucible surfaces. You couldn't glaze your crucibles without borax.
Nope. It's a crucible that's used to glaze crucibles?
In nuclear power plants, you need them for the neutron absorbers.
That's one of my favorite Pointer Sisters records.
In oil wells, the fracking compounds have boric acid in them. Porcelain enamels. And then on the back, there's a timeline of borax. Oh, this must have come from some, it's a handout from some borax company. The timeline of borax is fascinating, leading from the past, 18 to 12 million years ago, when the first boron deposits were formed, all the way to the future, which is apparently heralded by
sentient borax.
1997, the future, when the borax company celebrated its 125th anniversary and opened its visitor center. And then what's in this box? Here, I'll open this while you talk about the Patreon.
Please support our show at patreon.com/omnibusproject. There are lots of cool things available to Patreon supporters, including gifts, special handwritten notes from our shows, access to a photo array of pictures, including the one Ken took today of me trying to touch my toes. You
saw that?
You can suggest shows. You can interact with others.
This show was suggested, in fact, by Krista, who was donated at the Washing Bear level this year.
Thank you, Krista.
And we've been meaning to do the presidential fitness test for a long time, so we've jumped at the chance.
That's patreon.com/omnibusproject.
Chris sent us in what appeared to be like a stick blender box. It actually contained 2 20 Mule Team mugs from Boron, California, each with its own little chip of borate. Some kind of borax crystal.
Cool. Chris, what a wonderful set of gifts.
Now I finally own
I believe
borax.
That this shows true love and affection for us.
The flattened RC Cola cans were good enough.
Look at that borax.
This is just above and beyond.
It's really beautiful stuff.
And now we each have a 20 Mule Team mug.
You don't drink coffee, so what do you use mugs for?
My house is still full of mugs for some reason.
for the once a year you have hot chocolate.
Yeah, exactly. We really cut loose.
Do you ever drink tea?
Mostly herbal teas, I think, is what they get used for.
That's so lame.
Really?
Yeah.
A delicious rooibos tea.
Yeah, just picturing
with milk and honey is
you
lame
and Mindy
tea.
sitting around drinking herbal tea. Just somebody should come there and slap you.
It's because I wasn't into fitness in high school. Now I have to sit around and drink herbal tea all day and feel virtuous.
Do you have NPR on while you do it?
Oh, absolutely. Listeners, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived.
Look at this. I'm drinking out of a California Republic mug right now.
But you could switch over to a Boron California mug.
I'm going to.
Not only do we have NPR on, but we were just unpacking our Costco groceries when we drink our herbal tea.
Sure, with the other thin people.
We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. If the worst comes soon, however, this recording, like all our recordings, may be our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.